Thank you very much, Jim. So before we begin asking each other questions, I would like to begin American Democracy Week, my very first, by quoting Thomas Jefferson, because I really truly believe that if we do not quote at least one founder during American Democracy Week, we have failed. So in 1786, Thomas Jefferson said, "The basis of our governments being the opinion of the people, the very first object should be to keep that right. And were it left to me to decide whether we should have a government without newspapers or newspapers without a government, I should not hesitate a moment to prefer the latter. But I should mean that every man should receive those papers and be capable of reading them." So what we hear in that idea is that it really is a matter of being attentive to the goings on around you and being able to take in that information, to be literate about it, to understand what it means and to put it in context. That is what Thomas Jefferson thought of as a precursor, as a necessary precursor to democracy. But it also wouldn't be American Democracy Week if I did not come with an entire pocket full of Thomas Jefferson quotations. So let me run another one past you. Quote, "An informed citizenry is at the heart of a dynamic democracy." I'm not done. Here's another one. Quote, "And a well-informed citizenry is the best defense against tyranny." Let's go for a hat trick. Quote, "An informed citizenry is the only true repository of the public good." So I'm sure that you can hear that a major theme of this talk today is the idea of an informed citizenry. Because, as Jim was just saying, if we're going to have an American democracy that works for most people most of the time, if we're going to protect it, we need, as Thomas Jefferson recognized, to be informed about the world around us. But there are some big differences between 1786, when Thomas Jefferson was talking about the necessity of an informed citizenry, and today. One of those things is that today, unlike in 1786, I can vote too. But another thing is that our idea of what news is very different. Our idea of newspapers is very different. Our idea of a news environment is very different. In part because today, unlike in 1786, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Reddit, we have the chains. We have social media in ways that were just impossible in 1786. So the question that I am going to attempt to answer today is an informed citizenry possible in our social media age? And to be very clear, I am not just talking about news-seeking behaviors, right? Sure, we know that roughly 75% of Americans get their news from Facebook or Twitter. We know that. And we also know that 60% of them only read the headline, only read the post, and don't click through to read the rest of the article. These are things we know. I am not talking about that news-seeking behavior. What I am talking about is how social media platforms, how these companies define, select, and present what people think of as news. And crucially, keep in the back of our minds today, is for whose benefit do these technology companies define, select, and present the news? So today I'm going to begin by explaining some of the threats to American democracy by exploring several instances from Facebook, because there are several instances to explore. And then we'll get at some larger principles, and then we'll talk about some solutions. And before I begin talking about any of the articles that come to us from Facebook, I would like to be very clear. I am not talking about any of Facebook's privacy violations and abuses. Not at all. That is not the scope of my argument. They are rampant, they are many, they are terrifying. Not what I'm talking about today. I am just going to talk about the algorithmic side of Facebook today and what that means for our news environment. So let me sort of give us some context. I checked the US Census Bureau this morning, and according to them, there are 333 million people living in the United States today. Of those 333 million people living in the United States today, 226 million of them are active daily users on Facebook. I am not talking just about the people who are 18 and older, or just the people who are registered to vote, or just the people who do vote. I am talking of every living human in the United States today. 68% of them check in with Facebook at least once. And it is worth noting that Facebook is now owned by Meta, which is an umbrella corporation. They invented, in my opinion, to take some heat off of them after the Facebook brand turned sour. But Meta also owns, in addition to Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp. And so even if you aren't interacting with Facebook every day, chances are you are still using Messenger, or you are still on Instagram, or you are still texting people via WhatsApp. Okay. It is also worth noting that in 2021 alone, the amount of money that Facebook made from ad revenues just for its American user base, not any place else in the world, just for the American user base, was 50 billion with a B dollars. And I know that sometimes, with consonants, it can get a little fuzzy, so I'm going to repeat myself in numbers for folks on Zoom who may not have heard me well. 50 billion with a B dollars is the ad revenue that Facebook by itself brought in only in 2021. So let's now talk about how people interact with Facebook just through the example of news feeds. When Facebook first started out, the news feed was just like a Twitter feed. It was strictly chronological, and it strictly included posts from family and from friends, from people you knew and who were known to you, or who at least had accepted a Facebook friend request. And so the news feed was filled with information about weddings and engagements and, family, friends, kids' first steps, and the ice cream shop's local flavors of the day. But then in 2006, as ad revenue was becoming a growing factor in Facebook's decision-making, Facebook changed how posts were displayed in the newsfeed. It changed from a chronological presentation of posts from people who are known to you, and it became decided by an algorithm, a computerized decision-making process that considers many different factors and many different weights, and then adjusts what you see based on the decisions it makes about you. So we began to see posts disappear. We began to see people saying, hey, I really was looking to see more about my grandkids' softball game. I can't find that post anywhere, but my kids told me they posted it. Like, what's going on? And Mark Zuckerberg said, we're doing this for you both. And there were quite a few protests because people really liked the chronological news feeds. When Twitter decided to move away from its chronological news feeds, we remember the protests from those users, and Twitter moved right back to a chronological news feed. Facebook said, nah, no more chronological news feed for you, because all of their internal numbers indicated that even though people were protesting not having a chronological news feed anymore, they were spending more time on Facebook than ever before. And Facebook needs people to spend more time on Facebook. That's how they make money. The more time you spend on Facebook, the more ads you see, the more revenue Facebook makes from advertising. And so over the years, Facebook has tweaked its algorithms to get people to spend more time on Facebook. For example, this is a great book. It's called The Ugly Truth. And it is all about really the rise of Facebook and all of its legislative and lobbying maneuvering to try to stay on the top of the heap. And it was published in 2021. I can't recommend it enough. And so one of the things that happened, one of the tweaks to the algorithm Facebook made that governed your newsfeed, is that it began to prioritize news from family and friends again. But this was in 2015, so it wasn't just news from family and friends about, ice cream socials and picnics in the park. We are in the age of family and friends sharing hyper-partisan information, as Tim alluded to. We are firmly in the age of misinformation, and so all of the posts that family and friends are sharing have now become hyper-political. And the author's right. By prioritizing family and friends, Facebook was deprioritizing accredited news sites like the Washington Post. Users no longer saw posts from news sites featured prominently in their news feeds, but they continued to see the false and hyper-partisan news that their family members and friends were posting. And recall, what percentage of people just did not click through and read any of the articles? 60%. So even if there was a clickbait title, only the title of an article would stick in people's minds. Then we also have the introduction of the more varied reactions. In addition to liking something, now people can have a sad face. Now people can make an angry face. And one of the things that we know from leaked internal documents of Facebook is that Facebook used these reactions in the algorithm, right? Because it said, hey, if people are engaging with the story more, liking more, being sad more, being angry more, that means that it's a more newsworthy story and more people should see it. The problem, though, is that not all reactions counted equally. A like was worth 1 point, and anger was worth 5. And so what that means in the newsfeed is that stories that got people angry, that got people outraged, were being shared more, were being seen more, and were influencing not just what people thought about a particular issue, but it also influenced their perception of the news environment, much in the way that we think about shark attacks. On average, fewer than 12 people a year are attacked by a shark. But every summer, like clockwork, we get, oh, it's shark attack season. Oh no, we're going to report about the one shark attack that happened off the waters of New York, which is not great, and we're very sad, and it's a tragedy. I don't want anyone to be eaten by a shark. I really don't. But the outsized sense of importance that 12 shark attacks a year create in a news media is much the same way that the outsized sense of importance, particularly outraging news stories, and I say news stories very loosely, some were news, some were just misinformation, created. And people might think I'm thinking just on Facebook. I'm not. If we think about Cloudflare, do we know what Cloudflare is? Fantastic. Cloudflare is a company that handles 20% of the entire internet's traffic. And they provide websites as a service. They provide websites protection against distributed denial of service attacks, which are when hijacked browsers or bot networks repeatedly query a website for information causing the website to crash, right? Cloudflare chooses which websites it offers its services to and which it doesn't. So, for example, when the Daily Stormer, which is a neo-Nazi newsletter that's just online, and this is not me being pejorative and calling something neo-Nazi, they probably call themselves Nazis. I'm just repeating what they're saying, right? So when Cloudflare said we're no longer going to protect you from these attacks that could bring your website down, sure, they were making a business decision, but they were also making a decision about where that had implications for free speech, that also had implications for what people thought of as news and information and what they were exposed to. And because news is a necessary prerequisite for informed citizenry, it also made decisions for democracy as well. Now, I'm not going to cry about some Nazis being taken off the internet, but there are bigger issues at stake. Let's also consider Twitter. They finally removed misinformation peddler Alex Jones, the man who was recently sued and lost because he falsely claimed that no children were killed during the Sandy Hook elementary attack almost 10 years ago now. Twitter was lauded for finally removing Alex Jones' noted misinformation peddler from its website. But you know who's still there? All of the other InfoWars reporters, which I use loosely, all of the producers, all of the mirror websites, all of the links to Alex Jones's videos on banned.video. Twitter could ban that URL from being shared among Twitter users, but it didn't. What about TikTok? I imagine quite a few of us know and love TikTok. Even if you don't have it, half of internet users in the United States are directed to a TikTok video at least twice a day. The average amount of time spent on TikTok in an application on a phone, 2021, was 52 minutes. And every indication I have is that we're up to 80 now, but that's a lot. And that's not the best information I have to stick with 52 minutes a day, right? TikTok is owned by ByteDance, which is a company located in China. ByteDance follows the rules and legislation of the Chinese Communist Party, and yet it is in your pocket. It is determining via TikTok's proprietary algorithm what you see, what you're exposed to, and there's no reason that TikTok can't change its algorithm to begin promoting content that is much more in line with the value system of the Chinese Communist Party. So now it's not just even a matter of what are American companies doing, it is what are these international companies doing, what government systems are they following, and what are we exposing ourselves to if we're going to think of ourselves as being an informed citizenry, which is necessarily democracy. So that's the problem. What's the solution? I know, but with that, my time is up. So Tim and I are going to have some conversations. And one of the things that I also really hope is that we all begin to have some conversations among us about what we can do. So thank you very much.